Symbol before I get up here, but I failed to do so this morning. Good morning. If you have your Bibles this morning, if you'll turn with me to the book of Hebrews in chapter 11. Hebrews and 11. And when we get there, if you'll stand with me, Hebrews 11 and verse 20. Hebrews 11, verse 20, the Bible says, by faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith Jacob, when he was dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph and worshiped leaning upon the top of his staff. By faith Joseph, when he died, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel and gave commandment concerning his bones. Father, we thank you today for you and blessings, Lord. Have your way. Lord, open our hearts and our minds to your word and guide us according to your purpose. May you be glorified this morning. Have your way in all this goes on. Father, we thank you for the singing that touch our hearts, Lord. We thank you for those that are here this morning. Lord, just ask you to guide in all things. Just press your name and pray. Amen. Amen. It is strange this morning. We think about the fact that Brother Tony's not here. Of course, he's on vacation. And I was sitting there just a minute ago thinking that Tony has mentioned to me a few times that he has a friend named Charlie Morgan. And I thought, well, if he was here this morning, then I could introduce him to Charlie's daughter. But he's not here this morning. And Sister Jean's not here this morning. We missed her playing the piano. She doesn't think much about her playing, but I think it's beautiful. And miss her not being here this morning. She's been having some problems with her blood pressure, and she says she was a little bit flighty this morning. I can imagine that's probably part of it. So you remember her in your prayers. So in a sense, I guess we are kind of limping along because we think of them as being key. I do anyway. I think Brother Keith would love to see Brother Tony up here this morning, wouldn't you? And so we think about being key, but nonetheless, we can praise God anyway. I was thinking about this text there in Hebrews in chapter 12 and verse 20, or excuse me, chapter 11 and verse 20, where it talks about Isaac. By faith, Isaac blessed. Let me remind you again. I've done this several times as we've gone through this. Let me remind you again that in the majority of the cases that it's referring to, the idea that when he said by faith, basically what it boils down to is these people believe God. That's really what it amounts to. It boils down to the simple idea that they believed God. They believed God to the point of action. Sometimes we fail that, don't we? That's what Adam and Eve did. They failed in that. They didn't believe God to the point of action. They believed the serpent. And so as we come here, I want you to understand that Isaac and Jacob and Joseph, all in the case of what they're doing, is marking that they have believed God. But I want you to also know something else about what they've done. When Isaac blesses Jacob and Esau, what he is doing is he has come to a point in his life that he thinks he's about to die. He's not. He's quite a bit away from it. But he's blind, and he feels like he's going to die. And what Isaac does is he calls Esau and says, go and I want you to go and kill some venison. Prepare it the way you prepare it and bring it to me. So Esau goes out to do that. And as he's gone, Rebekah has overheard the conversation, and she gets Jacob and prepares him to deceive Isaac. And so the blessing that was supposed to be Esau's, that Isaac wanted to be Esau. Let me rephrase that. It was supposed to be Jacob's, okay? But Isaac was wanting Esau to have the blessing. All right? And so the blessing that Isaac wanted to give Esau, he gives to Jacob. And there's some things, by the way, in Genesis chapter 27, is where it's recorded at. If you want to turn there, you can. I'm not going to right now. I have written down in my notes the verses that I need to get to, okay? So if you want to turn there, you can. But there's some things that are promised to, are given to Jacob, and the blessing that Isaac gives in Genesis chapter 27. The whole thing is like from verse 26 to verse 40. The blessing to Jacob is like in verse 28 and 29. And what he tells him, he says, first of all, Jacob, you'll have the dew of heaven. God will give you the dew of heaven. The fatness of the earth. And God will give you plenty of corn and wine. Now, I don't know about you, but just for a moment, if you were a farmer, if you had seed in the ground, what would you be wanting? Well, if you had seed, what would you be wanting? You'd be wanting water and soil. Right? You'd be wanting water and soil. And with that water and soil, then you would have stuff coming up. Should be okay to me, I think.
Okay.
We need candy to make life sweet. But sometimes it can choke us. We need both soil and water to make things grow. And the blessing that Jacob gives, or Isaac gives Jacob, he says, God grant you these things. Both the water and the soil, and not just the water and the soil, but the increase. The corn and the wine. He goes on in verse 29, he says that people are going to serve you, to labor for you. Nations will bow down to you, to pay homage to you. And this includes your brothers, he says, which Esau and anyone else you might broaden that out to include would be included in that. The other nations that would be their relatives would be bowing down and laboring forward. And then he goes on and says in the last part of that verse, in verse 29, that whosoever shall bless you shall be blessed, and I'll curse whoever curses you, which is part of the Abrahamic covenant that was passed down to Isaac that now is being passed to Jacob. And while he's finishing up with Jacob, as Jacob walks out of the tent, apparently Esau's coming to the camp. He's got him a deer. He prepares it. He comes in to Isaac, and Isaac says, who are you? He said, I'm Esau, your son. Isaac knew something had happened. And as a result, we come into the end to verses 29, verse 39 and 40 and 27. And he says to Esau, because Esau wants their blessing also, he says to Esau, your dwelling, not that God gives you, your dwelling shall be the dew of heaven. That your dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth. In other words, I have given the blessing to Jacob that God would grant him these things, but you're going to have to work for it. It's going to be harder for you, Esau. And he says in verse 40, he says, your living will be by the sword. And that eventually, maybe you will win your freedom from the yoke of your brother. The Bible says in Hebrews in chapter 11, the last part of that verse, that what Isaac told them was things to come. Isaac blessed them concerning things to come. This is what would happen. This is what would be. This is what God had opened to Isaac. Isaac believed it, and Isaac gave it to his sons. And if you follow the history through the Bible and through archaeology and whatever else you want to, and even now, you'll find it's there. And then in verse 21, he goes on and says, by faith, Jacob, when he was dying, and by the way, he was dying. I didn't just thought he was dying. He wasn't yet, but Jacob was dying. And the word of God came to Joseph that Jacob, your father's dying, and Joseph grabs Manasseh and Ephraim, his two sons, Manasseh being the oldest and Ephraim being the youngest, and he takes them to Jacob, his father, and says, I brought my sons, and he brings them over to Jacob, and Jacob places his right hand, the hand of power, on Ephraim, and his left hand, the hand of servitude, on Manasseh. And Joseph said, no, you got them backwards. And Jacob said, I know what I'm doing. He was going blind too, but he knew what he was doing. He put the right hand on Ephraim. He says, they will both be mighty, they'll both be great, they'll both be powerful. But Ephraim, he's the one that was the mightiest of the two. We go down through history. David has come to the throne as the line of Judah, according to Christ. And then Solomon follows him. And after Solomon dies, the kingdom is divided. And you've got Judah and Benjamin, or the tribe, or the nation of Judah. Just Judah and Benjamin, those two. And the 10 tribes to the north, encompassing all the rest of them, they start getting their kings from a tribe called Ephraim. Ephraim is the greatest of the two. It says here in that verse 21 here in Hebrews 11 that he worshipped leaning upon his staff. And then the last verse there, verse 22, it speaks of Joseph when he was dying also, that he gave commandment concerning his body, his bones. And he spoke of Israel leaving. He spoke of Israel leaving Egypt. We've been studying through the early part of the Bible recently for a couple of years now, and got through Genesis and have come through the majority of Exodus, and are on the backside of Exodus now. They're outside now, but we have watched as Israel has come out of Egypt. And what did they do when they came out? They got the bones of Joseph. Three verses in the middle of a book of faith. Three heroes. Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. Three men who believed what God told them. I think about Isaac. Speaking of things to come. You know what? A book right here. Bless God. That tells me of things to come. You can believe what God has said, as Isaac did, or you cannot. By the way, that word blessing carries with it an idea of paying, worshiping. It includes the ideas, especially when you use the term in regard to God. It's a term of worship. And you can look at this concerning things to come, and you can be as Isaac and believe those things, believe and trust. Do you know what you do when you believe God? When you believe God and you act upon that, you're actually, in a sense, praising Him. You're glorifying Him. You're worshiping Him. When you believe man instead of God, and you trust what He has to say, then what you have done is you've elevated man above God. It is a matter of worship. Isaac believed God. But then it says in verse 21 that when Jacob blessed his sons when he was dying, or his grandsons, he worshipped leaning upon the top of the staff. There is a thought here. The idea of the leaning upon the top of the staff was a bowing. And the very things that Jacob said, by the way, he was speaking of things to come, he did it in worship. In other words, what Jacob did and what Isaac did was very similar. They both spoke of things to come. They both worshiped God in what they did. Then there comes to Joseph. Joseph said, I have lived in Egypt all these years. I came as a young man. I have been imprisoned here. I have ruled here. But this is not home. I have a promised place. That's home. I don't want to stay here. One of the things that I am told of things to come is that Christ will come. Christ one day is coming. And this place is not my home. It's not. This place isn't where I belong. I was listening to a video this week, and I didn't even think about it in terms of this. It just came to my mind. And I can't remember what it says, so don't worry about it. I can tell you that C.S. Lewis was being spoken about, but I can't remember what he said now. But it has something to do with the idea of our mortality here. We're consumed with time, was part of the idea. We think about how time flies so fast. It was mentioned this morning by Brother Scott in Sunday school, how time gets away from us. I can't remember exactly what you said, but I was thinking this tomorrow. You'll notice the calendar, the 21st is in red. That's because it's my birthday. And okay, it's Victoria Day in Canada. But anyway, time goes by so fast. When I was young, I couldn't wait to get to the age of 16 so I could drive. I couldn't wait to get to the age. I couldn't. There's so many things I couldn't wait doing. It's like forever, and suddenly, I'm 50. And time flies so fast, and we're consumed with the idea of how fast time goes as you get older. When you're young, you think, well, Alyssa's sitting here this morning thinking August 1st will never get here. She has her hand sitting on her stomach like this right here. Most of us sit like right here, but She's got a little one on the way. And when you're pregnant and you go through all the processes that pregnant women go through, not that I ever have any experience at all with that, but you feel like it will never come. And then they're born. And you can't figure out why all the time went. They were just this big just a little while ago, and now they're graduating from high school, getting jobs. Then you become a grandparent. Time flies. And he was making the comment, maybe the reason why we're so consumed with the idea of time is because we are not temporal creatures. This world's not our home. We're looking to an eternity. We're looking to an eternity. When Joseph was talking about the idea that Egypt was not where he wanted his bones to stay, he was talking about the place that Israel one day would go, the promised land. But listen, do you know that everybody out here in this graveyard, unless for some reason they buried them upside down or face down or turned them the wrong way or whatever because of something they had done, every one of them out here behind us is facing east. Every one of them laying out here behind us and around us, even these over here that have been buried for a long time, are facing to the east. You know why? Because the Bible says that one day that Jesus will come in the eastern sky. This is a home. This is a home. We're just passing through. That was the comment that was made about Abraham just a little bit in verse 15. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from which they had come out, they might have had an opportunity to return. It's not home, but they have desired in verse 16 a better country, that is in a heavenly, wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. Home. There are some things coming. And I worship God because of it. He's coming one day for me. This is not my home. We get a song here. Let's do this.